The massive warship of the Galactic Empire hung in space above Earth like a storm cloud ready to burst. Inside the command center, Admiral HFY Theta stood tall on his four legs, his purple scales shining under the bright lights. His three eyes looked down at the blue and green planet below with satisfaction. Finally, he said, his voice sounding like grinding metal, "The humans have surrendered. After 2 years of war, they have accepted defeat." His second in command, a creature that looked like a giant insect made of crystal, clicked its mandibles in agreement. "Yes, Admiral, the human fleet is destroyed. Their cities lie in ruins. They have no choice but to accept our terms." The Admiral's thin lips curved into what his species considered a smile. "Send word to the Emperor. Tell him that Earth is now part of the Galactic Empire. The humans will make excellent slaves for our mining colonies." Down on Earth, in what used to be New York City, the ruins told a different story. Buildings that once touched the sky were now broken teeth pointing at the stars. Streets that used to be filled with yellow taxis and busy people were now empty and quiet, covered in dust and debris. In a hidden bunker deep underground, General Sarah Chun sat at a metal table, looking at the surrender documents. Her uniform was torn and dirty. Her face showed the exhaustion of 2 years of fighting a war that couldn't be won. Around her, other human military leaders sat in silence, their faces showing defeat. "We have no choice," General Chun said, her voice heavy. "They've destroyed 90% of our military. Half our population is dead. If we don't surrender now, they'll kill everyone." Colonel James Rodriguez, a man who had lost his left arm in the Battle of London, slammed his remaining fist on the table. "This isn't right. We can't just give up. What would you have us do, Colonel?" General Chun asked tiredly. "Fight them with sticks and stones? They have weapons that can destroy entire continents. Their shields can stop our strongest nuclear weapons like their firecrackers." The room fell silent again. Everyone knew she was right. The Galactic Empire had technology that was thousands of years ahead of Earth's. Their soldiers were stronger, faster, and better equipped. Their ships could travel between stars in days while humans had barely reached Mars. "I'll sign it," General Chun said finally. "God help us all, but I'll sign it." As she picked up the pen, a young lieutenant burst into the room. "General, we've intercepted a transmission from the Empire's ship. They're celebrating. They think the war is over." General Chun looked at the young man. "It is over, Lieutenant. But, ma'am," the lieutenant continued, "they're already talking about which humans to take first for the slave camps. They're saying things, terrible things about what they'll do to our children." The room grew cold. Every person there had family somewhere, hiding in shelters, praying for survival. The thought of their loved ones being taken as slaves made their blood boil. General Chun put down the pen. "Lieutenant, send a message to all remaining resistance cells. Tell them to wait for my signal." "Ma'am." Colonel Rodriguez looked confused. "We'll sign the surrender," General Chun said, standing up. "We'll let them think they've won. But, Colonel, you're right. This isn't right. And maybe, just maybe, we have one advantage they don't know about." "What advantage is that, General?" Chun smiled grimly. "They think we're beaten. They think we're just another weak species to add to their empire. They don't understand humans. They don't understand what we're capable of when our backs are against the wall." In the weeks that followed, the surrender ceremony was prepared. The Galactic Empire wanted to make a show of it, to broadcast Earth's defeat to all the other worlds in the galaxy as a warning. Submit or be destroyed. Admiral HFY Theta personally came down to Earth for the ceremony. He wanted to see the defeated humans with his own 3 eyes. He wanted to smell their fear and despair. The ceremony was held in the ruins of the United Nations building, a symbolic choice that the Admiral found amusing. Thousands of Empire soldiers surrounded the area, their plasma weapons ready, their armor gleaming in the sun. Flying drones recorded everything, broadcasting live to hundreds of worlds. This was to be the Empire's greatest triumph. General Chun stood in the center of the plaza, the surrender documents in her hand. She was flanked by other human leaders, all looking defeated and broken. Behind them, A few hundred human civilians have been allowed to witness their species' humiliation. Admiral Zix Theta approached, his massive form towering over the humans. Each of his steps made the ground shake. His personal guard, elite warriors from a dozen different species, spread out around him. General Chun, the admiral said, his translator making his words understandable, but not hiding the contempt in his voice. You have made the wise choice. The Galactic Empire is merciful to those who surrender. Your species will serve us well. General Chun nodded, keeping her eyes down. We understand, Admiral. We accept your terms. Good, the Admiral said. Now, kneel before me and present the documents. Show the galaxy that humanity knows its place. The General slowly got to her knees, and the other human leaders did the same. The Admiral's 3 eyes gleamed with satisfaction. This was perfect. The mighty humans, who had dared to resist the Empire for 2 years, were now on their knees in the dirt. As General Chun held up the documents, something strange happened. One of the civilians in the crowd, a man who looked like he had seen better days, started to laugh. It wasn't a laugh of madness or despair. It was a genuine, amused laugh. The Admiral's eyes swiveled to look at the man. Silence that fool, he ordered one of his guards. The guard moved toward the laughing man, but the man just laughed harder. I'm sorry, the man said, wiping tears from his eyes. It's just, you really don't know, do you? Know what? Human, the Admiral demanded. The man straightened up, and suddenly he didn't look so broken anymore. In fact, he looked like a soldier. You don't know rule number 1. General Chun, still on her knees, allowed herself a small smile. What rule? The Admiral asked, his voice showing the first hint of uncertainty. The man grinned. Never underestimate humans when they have nothing left to lose. At that moment, General Chun dropped the surrender documents and rolled to the side. The civilians in the crowd threw off their ragged clothes, revealing military gear underneath. Weapons appeared from hidden places, and suddenly the air was filled with gunfire. But this wasn't the same kind of battle as before. The humans weren't using their old weapons. In the 2 weeks since the surrender, every scientist, engineer, and creative mind left on Earth had been working on one problem: how to fight an enemy with superior technology. The answer was surprisingly simple. The Empire's shields were designed to stop energy weapons and fast-moving projectiles. But they had a weakness. They didn't stop slow-moving objects. A thrown rock could pass right through. So the humans had gone back to basics. Crossbows firing special bolts. Compressed air guns shooting poison darts. Explosives placed by hand in the right spots. And, most importantly, they had studied every bit of captured Empire technology, looking for weaknesses. The Admiral's guards reacted quickly, their training taking over. Energy beams filled the air, cutting down several humans. But for every human that fell, 2 more seemed to appear. They came from the sewers, from ruined buildings, from holes in the ground. Admiral Zix Theta roared in anger, his personal shield flaring as primitive projectiles bounced off it. Kill them all, he screamed. Burn this entire city. But something was wrong. His communications weren't working. The drones that were supposed to be broadcasting the surrender were instead showing static. And in the distance, explosions were going off at the landing sites where the Empire's shuttles were parked. General Chun, now on her feet with a crossbow in her hands, shot a bolt that passed through a guard's shield and into his neck. The alien fell, purple blood spurting from the wound. You want to know what rule number 1 really is? Chun shouted over the noise of battle. Humans don't give up. Ever. You can knock us down. You can beat us bloody. You can take everything from us. But we'll get back up. We'll find a way. We always find a way. The Admiral's 3 eyes widened as he realized the truth. This wasn't just an ambush at the surrender ceremony. All across the planet, similar attacks were happening. Every Empire outpost, every patrol, every ship that had landed on Earth was under attack. The humans had spent 2 weeks not preparing to surrender, but preparing for this moment. They had studied their enemy, found their weaknesses, and planned a coordinated strike that would happen all at once. You think you've won because you destroyed our fleets and our cities, General Chin continued, reloading her crossbow. But you forgot something important. Earth has 8 billion people. Even if you killed half of us, that still leaves 4 billion very angry humans with nothing left to lose. The battle in the plaza was fierce but short. The Empire soldiers, for all their advanced technology and superior physical abilities, weren't prepared for this kind of fight. They were used to enemies who fought by the rules, who used energy weapons and tactics they understood. But humans didn't fight by those rules. They used tricks, traps, and guerrilla tactics. They attacked from unexpected angles, used the urban environment to their advantage, and, most importantly, they fought with the desperate fury of people defending their home. Admiral Zox Theta found himself surrounded, his guards dead or dying around him. His personal shield was failing, damaged by repeated impacts. His weapon was empty, and his calls for reinforcement went unanswered. General Chan approached him, her crossbow aimed at his center eye. "You're going to send a message to your emperor," she said calmly. "Never," the admiral snarled. "I'll die before I help you." Chin shrugged. "That's fine. We'll just use your communication codes to send it ourselves. But I thought you might want to live to see what happens next." What happens next? "Your empire made a mistake," Chin said. "You united all of humanity against a common enemy. You showed us what's out there in the galaxy. And you taught us a valuable lesson, that we need to be stronger." She gestured to the battlefield around them, where human fighters were stripping advanced weapons and equipment from fallen Empire soldiers. "We're quick learners, Admiral. Every piece of your technology we capture, we study. Every tactic you use, we adapt to. Every weakness you have, we exploit." The Admiral's scales had turned a pale purple, a sign of fear in his species. You can't defeat the Empire. We have thousands of worlds, millions of ships." "Maybe," Chin admitted, "but here's the thing about humans. We're stubborn. We're creative. And when we're pushed to the edge, we're absolutely ruthless. Your empire is about to learn what it means to have humanity as an enemy." She leaned closer. "You want to know the real rule number one? It's simple. You can defeat our armies. You can destroy our cities. You can kill millions of us. But you can never defeat the human spirit. And as long as even one human draws breath, the fight isn't over." In space, the Empire warship still hung over Earth, its crew unaware that their admiral was captured and their ground forces were being systematically destroyed. They were confident in their superiority, secure in their technology, certain of their victory. They were about to learn how wrong they were. On the bridge of the warship, the communications officer suddenly straightened. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface." "Put it through," the ship's captain ordered. It must be the admiral confirming the surrender. But instead of Admiral Zox Theta, the screen showed General Chun standing in the plaza, surrounded by armed humans. Behind her, the admiral was on his knees, his hands bound, his 3 eyes full of defeat. "Attention, Galactic Empire vessel," General Chun said clearly. "This is General Sarah Chun of Earth. Your ground forces have been defeated. Your admiral is our prisoner. You have 1 hour to leave our solar system." The captain's 4 mouths dropped open in shock. This is impossible. Destroy them. Fire all weapons." "Sir," the weapons officer said nervously, "we can't. The admiral is down there. And, sir, something's wrong with our targeting systems." All across the ship, warning lights began to flash. The Empire had made another crucial error. They had allowed humans to come aboard as slaves during the occupation. Humans who had used their time to study the ship's systems, to plant surprises, to prepare for this moment. The captain watched in horror as system after system began to fail. Not destroyed, just disabled. The humans had learned that they didn't need to match the Empire's technology. They just needed to understand it well enough to break it. "Get us out of here," the captain screamed. But it was too late. From Earth's surface, hidden missile silos opened. Weapons that the Empire thought were destroyed launched into space. They weren't powerful enough to destroy the warship, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to damage its engines. The massive ship shuddered as explosions rippled along its hull. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to cripple it. Enough to send a message. Back on Earth, General Chun watched the wounded ship trying to limp away. Around her, humans were celebrating their first real victory against the Empire. But Chun knew this was just the beginning. Send word to all resistance cells worldwide, she ordered. Phase 1 is complete. Begin Phase 2. What's Phase 2, General? Colonel Rodriguez asked. Chun smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just caught the scent of prey. We're going to take their technology, learn from it, improve on it. We're going to build our own fleet. And then we're going to show the Galactic Empire what happens when you try to enslave humanity. She turned to look at Admiral HFY Theta, who was being led away by human guards. Your empire thought they'd won. They thought we were just another weak species to conquer. They forgot rule number 1. In the distance, more explosions lit up the sky as Empire installations across the planet came under attack. The news would soon spread throughout the galaxy. Earth had not fallen. Humanity had not surrendered. The war was far from over. And somewhere in the galaxy, on the throne world of the Galactic Empire, the Emperor would soon receive a message that would shake him to his core. A message that would make him realize that perhaps, just perhaps, attempting to conquer humanity had been the Empire's greatest mistake. The message was simple, just 4 words that would echo through the stars and become a rallying cry for oppressed species everywhere. Humanity is still fighting. The real war was about to begin. And this time, humanity knew their enemy's weaknesses. This time, they had captured technology. This time, they had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The Galactic Empire thought they had won. They were about to learn how wrong they were. They were about to learn rule number 1 the hard way. Never, ever underestimate humanity. The captured Empire technology lay spread across the underground hangar like pieces of an impossible puzzle. Dr. Marcus Webb walked among the alien devices with the excitement of a child on Christmas morning, his team of scientists following close behind. Each piece of equipment was a mystery waiting to be solved, a secret waiting to be unlocked. Look at this, Dr. Webb said, running his hands over what appeared to be a small engine. The power output from something this size could run all of New York for a year, if we can figure out how it works. His assistant, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, was examining a damaged Empire rifle with equal fascination. The energy compression technology is beyond anything we imagined. They're using some kind of controlled quantum field to contain plasma at temperatures that should be impossible. All across Earth, similar scenes were playing out. In hidden bunkers and secret facilities, humanity's brightest minds were taking apart Empire technology piece by piece. Every circuit was mapped, every alloy was analyzed, every energy signature was recorded. It was the largest reverse engineering project in human history. General Chin stood in the command center, watching dozens of screens showing the progress at different locations. Colonel Rodriguez stood beside her, his expression thoughtful. How long before we can start producing our own versions? Rodriguez asked. Dr. Webb estimates 6 months for basic weapons, Chin replied. Maybe a year for spacecraft systems. But he also says we might be able to improve on their designs. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Improve? Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. Chin smiled. That's exactly the point. They've been using the same technology for thousands of years. They've gotten comfortable, complacent. They stopped innovating. But humans? We've gone from horses to spaceships in less than 200 years. Innovation is what we do. On the screens, a video feed showed Admiral HFY Theta in his cell. The alien commander sat in silence, his 3 eyes staring at nothing. He had refused to eat for the first 2 days, but survival instinct had eventually won out. Has he said anything useful? Rodriguez asked. Not yet, Chin admitted. But our psychologists are working on him. They say his species has a strong hierarchical structure. Without orders from above, he's lost. We might be able to use that. Meanwhile, in the cell, Admiral HFY Theta was having his own realizations. The humans treating him weren't the savage primitives he had expected. They were organized, intelligent, and surprisingly humane. They gave him food suited to his biology, medical care for his injuries, and even books translated into his language. It was confusing. The Empire's way was simple: conquer or be conquered, rule or serve. But these humans seemed to operate by different rules. They could have tortured him for information, but instead they just talked to him. Dr. Lisa Patel, the lead psychologist, visited him daily. She would sit outside his cell and ask him questions. Not about military secrets at first, just about his home, his culture, his beliefs. And despite himself, ZYX Theta found himself answering. "Your empire has conquered many worlds," Dr. Patel said during one visit. "But have you ever wondered if there might be a better way?" "There is no better way," ZYX Theta responded automatically. "The strong rule, the weak serve. It is the natural order." "Is it?" Dr. Patel asked gently. "On Earth, we found that cooperation often yields better results than domination. Different species, different cultures, working together, each contributing their strengths." ZYX Theta's scales rippled, a sign of agitation. "Impossible. Without a strong leader, without clear hierarchy, there is only chaos." "Really?" "Because right now, humans are working together across the entire planet without any single leader commanding them. They're sharing information, coordinating attacks, supporting each other. All because they choose to, not because anyone is forcing them." The Admiral had no response to that. It went against everything he had been taught, everything the Empire stood for. But he couldn't deny what he was seeing. Above Earth, the crippled Empire warship hung in space like a wounded beast. Its crew had managed to restore partial engine function, but not enough to leave the solar system. They were trapped, sending increasingly desperate messages back to the Empire. But those messages took time to travel between the stars. And in that time, humanity was preparing. In the Pacific Ocean, deep beneath the waves, construction had begun on something ambitious. Using captured Empire technology and human ingenuity, engineers were building Earth's first true warship. Not just a spacecraft, but a vessel designed for war among the stars. Captain Maria Santos stood on the construction platform, watching welders work on the ship's hull. She had been chosen to command this vessel when it was complete, and she took the responsibility seriously. "The frame is human design," the chief engineer explained, "but we're integrating Empire shield generators and weapon systems. We're also adding some surprises of our own." "Such as?" Santos asked. The engineer grinned. "Well, the Empire's shields are designed to stop energy and kinetic weapons. But we figured out a frequency modulation that should let us punch through. And we're installing what we're calling wasp mines, tiny drones that can attach to enemy hulls and eat through them from the outside." Santos nodded approvingly. "How many ships can we build? If we push hard, maybe 6 in the first year. But each one will be better than the last as we learn more about the technology." The work continued around the clock. Humans had always been good at building things quickly when motivated, and nothing motivated quite like survival. But building ships was only part of the plan. General Chin knew that to truly defeat the Empire, they needed allies. And according to the intelligence they had gathered from captured Empire databases, there were plenty of potential allies out there. The Galactic Empire ruled through fear and force. Hundreds of species served them, but not all were willing servants. Many had been conquered like Earth, their populations enslaved, their resources stripped. If these species could be contacted, if they could be shown that resistance was possible. "We need to get a message out," Chin told her staff. "Not to the Empire, but to the enslaved worlds. Show them what we've done. Show them that the Empire can be beaten." "How?" someone asked. "We don't have faster-than-light communication." "No," Chin agreed, "but we have something else. We have Admiral ZYX Theta, and his ship has a quantum communicator. If we could get aboard and use it." It was a risky plan, but risk had become humanity's middle name. A team was assembled, led by Major Jake Thompson, a man who had earned the nickname Ghost for his ability to infiltrate enemy positions. Under cover of darkness, Thompson and his team approached the crippled warship in a stolen Empire shuttle. The ship's sensors were damaged, its crew depleted and demoralized. Getting aboard was easier than expected. Moving through the ship's corridors was like walking through an alien cathedral. Everything was built to a scale larger than human, designed for beings that saw in different spectrums and breathed different air. But Thompson's team had trained for this, using captured Empire equipment to acclimate themselves. They reached the communication center without raising an alarm. The Empire, in their arrogance, had never considered that primitives might board their ship. Their internal security was minimal. Dr. Tanaka, who had joined the mission for her technical expertise, quickly got to work on the quantum communicator. "This is incredible," she whispered. "It uses quantum entanglement to send messages instantly across any distance. If we can figure out how to replicate this." Later, Doc Thompson said, "Right now, we need to send our message." The message had been carefully crafted. It showed the battle at the surrender ceremony, the capture of Admiral ZYX Theta, the crippling of the warship. But more than that, it showed humans working together, learning, adapting. It showed that the Empire was not invincible. The message ended with General Chun speaking directly to the camera. "To all species suffering under the Empire's rule, know this: you are not alone. Resistance is possible. Freedom is possible. Earth stands ready to support any who wish to throw off their chains." The Empire thinks they rule through strength, but they have forgotten that the strength of the many can overcome the strength of the few. Join us, and together we will show them what true strength looks like. The message was sent to every enslaved world in the Empire's database. Then Thompson's team planted explosives in key systems and made their escape. As their shuttle pulled away, the warship's communication array exploded, preventing the crew from warning the Empire about what had just happened. Back on Earth, the first human warship was nearing completion. The ship, christened Defiance, was a hybrid of human and Empire technology that shouldn't have worked, but did. Human creativity had found ways to merge the two technologies that the Empire's hidebound engineers would never have considered. But even as humanity celebrated these victories, they knew the real test was coming. The Empire would not ignore what had happened on Earth. A fleet would be sent to crush this rebellion before it could spread. Admiral ZYX Theta, in his cell, had finally begun to talk. Not about military secrets, he still had some pride, but about the Empire itself, about its structure, its politics, its weaknesses. "You have angered the Emperor," he told Dr. Patel. "He will send a punishment fleet. Not just a few ships, but hundreds. They will turn your planet to glass." "Maybe," Dr. Patel said calmly. "Or maybe they'll find us ready for them. Tell me, Admiral, in your 1,000 years of conquest, has the Empire ever faced a species that captured your technology and improved on it within months?" ZYX Theta was silent. "Has the Empire ever faced a species that united their entire planet against you? That fought not for glory or conquest, but for survival and freedom?" Still silence. "You see, Admiral, the Empire's strength is also its weakness. You're so used to winning through superior technology that you've forgotten how to truly fight. You've forgotten how to adapt, how to innovate, how to overcome impossible odds. But humans, we've been doing that our entire history. Around the world, recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. Every human wanted to be part of the fight. Those who couldn't serve in combat found other ways to help, building weapons, growing food, caring for the wounded. Earth had become a single war machine with 8 billion moving parts. The captured Empire technology was yielding more secrets every day. Energy shields were being fitted to cities. Plasma weapons were being mass-produced. And in hidden shipyards, more warships were taking shape. But perhaps the most important development was happening in a small lab in Japan. Dr. Tanaka, working with a team of physicists, had made a breakthrough in understanding the Empire's faster-than-light drive. "It's not just about going faster than light," she explained to General Chun. "It's about bending space itself. And if we can bend space for travel, we can bend it for other things too. Such as..." Tanaka's eyes gleamed. "Such as creating pockets of space where time moves differently, or folding space to make distances shorter." or even creating small wormholes for instant communication. Chun felt a chill run down her spine. You're talking about technologies the Empire doesn't have. Exactly. They've been using the same FTL drive for millennia. They never thought to push it further, to see what else was possible. But we did. It was a reminder of humanity's greatest strength. Not their courage or determination, but their endless curiosity and creativity. Give a human an alien technology, and they wouldn't just copy it. They would take it apart, understand it, and then make something better. 6 months after the failed surrender, Earth was transformed. Cities had shields, soldiers had plasma weapons, and the first human warships were ready for action. But, more importantly, the message sent to enslaved worlds had been received. Reports came in from Empire sources. Unrest on a dozen worlds, sabotage in shipyards, slaves refusing to work. The message had lit a spark, and that spark was spreading. The Empire, for the first time in its long history, was facing something it didn't understand, a contagion of hope. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were suddenly wondering if freedom was possible. And once that idea took root, it was impossible to destroy. In his throne room on the Empire's capital world, the Emperor received report after report of problems. A minor rebellion here, a work stoppage there. Individually, they were insignificant, but together, they painted a troubling picture. How? The Emperor demanded of his advisors. How did one primitive world cause all this? His advisors had no answer. They understood conquest and control, but not inspiration and hope. They couldn't comprehend how one planet's resistance could inspire others light years away. Finally, the Emperor made a decision. Prepare the Fifth Fleet. 500 ships. We will make an example of Earth that none will forget. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Empire. But even as the Fifth Fleet prepared to depart, changes were happening within the Empire itself. Younger officers, those who had studied the reports from Earth, began to question. If humans could adapt Empire technology so quickly, what did that say about the Empire's supposed superiority? If humans could unite their entire species against a common enemy, what did that say about the Empire's divide and conquer tactics? These questions were whispered in corridors, discussed in private messages. The Empire had ruled through fear for so long. They had forgotten that fear could turn to anger, and anger to determination. On Earth, long-range sensors detected the approaching fleet weeks before it arrived. 500 ships, each one a masterpiece of destruction. Against them, Earth had 6 hybrid warships and whatever ground defenses they had managed to build. By any reasonable calculation, it was hopeless. But humans had never been reasonable. They think they're coming to finish us, General Chun said to her assembled commanders. They think this will be like every other rebellion they've crushed. They're wrong. She activated a holographic display showing the solar system. We've had 6 months to prepare. Every asteroid has been turned into a weapon. Every moon is a fortress. Space itself is mined with our new singularity bombs. They want to fight? We'll give them a war. Captain Santos, aboard the Defiance, looked at her crew. Humans who 6 months ago had never been in space, now ready to fight an interstellar empire. Remember, she told them, we're not trying to match them ship for ship. We're trying to show them that every meter of space they take will cost them. We're trying to make them bleed. In his cell, Admiral Zoyax Theta felt something he had never experienced before, sympathy for an enemy. He had spent enough time among humans to understand them now, to respect them, and he knew what was coming. You can't win, he told Dr. Patel. The Fifth Fleet is too strong. Maybe we can't win, Dr. Patel agreed. But we can make victory so costly that the Empire thinks twice about trying again. And sometimes, Admiral, that's enough. The alien commander looked at this small human woman who spoke so calmly about facing impossible odds. For the first time in his long life, he began to understand that there were different kinds of strength. The Empire had the strength of technology and numbers, but humans had the strength of will and innovation. As the Fifth Fleet approached the solar system, Earth's defenders made their final preparations. They knew many of them would die in the coming battle, but they also knew that their sacrifice would not be in vain. Win or lose, they had already changed the galaxy. They had shown that the Empire could be defied, could be hurt, could be made to bleed. The message had been sent, the spark had been lit, and across the galaxy, enslaved species watched and waited to see if Earth could do the impossible one more time. In space, the human warships moved into position. 6 ships against 500. It was insane. It was hopeless. It was exactly the kind of fight humans had been preparing for their entire history. All ships, this is General Chun. The commander's voice echoed through the fleet. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. Today, we remind the Empire of rule number 1. They think they've won. Let's show them how wrong they are. The Fifth Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Their formation perfect, their weapons charged. They expected to find a terrified planet preparing for annihilation. Instead, they found a trap. The first singularity bomb detonated among the lead ships, creating a microscopic black hole that existed for only seconds, but tore apart everything within 1,000 kilometers. Ships that had survived millennia were reduced to atoms in an instant. Before the fleet could react, more bombs detonated. Hidden in the asteroid belt, disguised as debris, they had been waiting. Each one was a masterpiece of human engineering, using principles derived from Empire technology, but pushed to extremes the Empire had never imagined. The fleet's admiral, a creature of living crystal named Vortax, watched in shock as 1/10 of his force was destroyed in the first minute of battle. This wasn't how primitives fought. This wasn't possible. All ships, scatter, he commanded. Scan for more mines. Advance with caution. But caution was a luxury he couldn't afford. From Jupiter's moons, massive rail guns opened fire. Chunks of iron and tungsten accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, smashed into Empire shields. The shields held, but the impacts knocked ships off course, disrupted formations. And then the human warship struck. 6 ships against 450, but these 6 ships fought like nothing the Empire had seen before. They used hit-and run tactics, dropping out of micro-jumps to fire volleys of modified weapons, then vanishing before return fire could find them. The Defiance, under Captain Santos, performed maneuvers that should have torn the ship apart. Human engineers had found ways to reinforce the hull structure using Empire materials, creating a ship that could withstand stresses no Empire vessel could match. Target their command ship, Santos ordered. Full spread of wasp mines. The tiny drones, each no bigger than a human fist, launched from the Defiance and scattered. Empire point defense systems, designed for missiles and energy weapons, couldn't track objects so small. The drones attached themselves to Vortax's flagship and began eating through the hull with molecular disassemblers. But the Empire's numbers were telling. For every success the humans had, they paid a price. The U.S. Thunder, one of the 6 warships, took a direct hit from a planet-killer weapon. The ship's shields flared and died, and the Thunder broke apart in a flash of light. On Earth, people watched the battle through telescopes and sensors. They saw their defenders fighting impossible odds. They saw ships dying, but they also saw something else. The Empire fleet was hurting. Burning ships drifted through space. Formations that had been perfect were now ragged. Launch Phase 2, General Chin commanded. From Earth's surface, hundreds of missiles launched. Not warship killers, but something more subtle. Each missile was loaded with a computer virus, painstakingly crafted from studying Empire systems. As the missiles were destroyed by point defense, they released clouds of nanobots that drifted toward Empire ships. Most were destroyed or deflected, but some got through. Some found hull breaches or sensor ports. And once inside Empire systems, they began to spread. Not destroying, just disrupting. Making weapons fire a half-second late. Making shields flicker at the wrong moment. Making navigation computers give slightly wrong readings. The Empire fleet, used to overwhelming firepower solving all problems, found itself in a kind of battle it didn't understand. This wasn't ship against ship. This was system against system, innovation against tradition. Admiral Vortax, watching his tactical display fill with error messages and damage reports, made a fateful decision. All ships commence planetary bombardment. Burn Earth to the core. But as the fleet moved into bombardment position, they discovered Earth's final surprise. The planet's new shield wasn't like Empire shields. Instead of trying to stop attacks, it redirected them. Energy beams that struck the shield were bent, refracted, sent back into space at different angles. Some even struck other Empire ships. It was impossible. A shield that could redirect energy on that scale shouldn't exist. But humans had looked at Empire technology and asked different questions. Instead of, how do we make it stronger? They had asked, how do we make it smarter? The battle raged for hours. Empire ships died by the dozens, but human ships died too. The UES Liberty exploded under concentrated fire. The UES Phoenix lost engines and drifted helpless until Empire weapons found her. But for every human ship that died, the crews took Empire vessels with them. Ramming attacks, suicide runs, tricks, and traps that no civilized military would consider. Because humans weren't fighting a civilized war. They were fighting for survival. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Santos watched her display with grim satisfaction. They had lost 4 of their 6 ships, but the Empire had lost over 100. More importantly, they had lost the illusion of invincibility. Captain, her sensor officer called out, I'm reading a massive energy buildup in the enemy flagship. They're preparing some kind of super weapon. Santos nodded. They had expected this. The Empire, when faced with actual resistance, would escalate. They would use weapons banned by their own laws, weapons that could crack planets. Signal all remaining assets, Santos commanded. Execute Omega Protocol. Across the solar system, hidden installations activated. Humanity's last gambit, their final trap. Using principles derived from the Empire's FTL drive, they had built something that should have been impossible, a spacefold weapon that could create temporary wormholes. As Admiral Vortax's superweapon charged, space around his flagship began to distort. A wormhole opened, not to another location, but to the heart of the sun. For just a moment, a corridor of twisted space connected the flagship to a stellar inferno. The flagship's shields held for exactly 1.3 seconds before the heat and pressure overwhelmed them. The pride of the Empire fleet, a ship that had conquered 100 worlds, was consumed in stellar fire. The remaining Empire ships, seeing their admiral destroyed by a weapon they didn't understand, faced a choice. Continue the attack and face more impossible weapons, or retreat and report this disaster to the Emperor. They chose retreat. As the battered Fifth Fleet limped away from Earth, they left behind the wreckage of over 200 ships. But more than that, they left behind the myth of Empire invincibility. They left behind proof that the Empire could be beaten. On Earth, the celebrations were muted. They had won, but at a terrible cost. Thousands of humans had died in space. Cities had been damaged by the few bombardment shots that had gotten through. And everyone knew this was not the end. General Chun stood in the command center, looking at the casualty reports. So many good people lost, but their sacrifice had bought something precious, time and credibility. Send a new message, she ordered, to every enslaved world, every species under the Empire's heel. Include the battle footage. Show them everything. The message was simple. Earth stands. The Empire's Fifth Fleet came to destroy us, and we sent them running. We are still here. We are still fighting. And we are not alone. Rise up. The Empire can be beaten. We have shown you how. In his cell, Admiral Zoax Theta watched the battle footage with his 3 eyes wide. He had commanded fleets for the Empire for centuries. He had never seen tactics like these, never imagined weapons like these. How? He asked Dr. Patel when she visited. How did you do this? We learned from you, she said simply. We took your technology and asked ourselves how to make it better. We studied your tactics and asked ourselves how to counter them. We looked at your strengths and found the weaknesses hidden within them. But the weapons you used, some of them violate the laws of physics as we understand them. Dr. Patel smiled. Your understanding of physics is based on thousands of years of the same theories. Ours is based on constantly questioning, constantly pushing boundaries. You asked how we did this, Admiral? We did it by refusing to accept that anything is impossible. Across the galaxy, the message from Earth spread like wildfire. Not through official channels. The Empire tried to suppress it. But through hidden networks, whispered communications, secret gatherings. Species that had been enslaved for millennia saw something they had never seen before. The Empire running from a fight. On the industrial world of Nexus 7, insectoid workers who had labored in factories for generations put down their tools. On the agricultural world of Verdania, the plant-like servants who had tended crops for the Empire refused to harvest. On mining colonies and shipyards, on fortress worlds and trading posts, the impossible idea spread. Resistance was possible. The Emperor, in his throne room, raged at his advisors. One world, one primitive world has done this. How? But his advisors had no answer. They couldn't understand that it wasn't about one world. It was about an idea. The idea that the Empire was not invincible. The idea that freedom was possible. And ideas, as humans had learned long ago, were the most powerful weapons of all. On Earth, the work continued. New ships were being built, incorporating lessons learned from the battle. Scientists worked around the clock to unlock more secrets from captured technology. And recruiters turned away more volunteers than they could accept. Every human wanted to be part of what came next. Because everyone knew this was just the beginning. The Empire would come again, with more ships, with bigger weapons. But humanity would be ready. They had tasted victory against impossible odds. They had shown the galaxy that the Empire could bleed. And, most importantly, they had learned the truth about rule number 1. It wasn't just about human stubbornness or refusal to surrender. It was about something deeper, the human ability to take any situation, no matter how hopeless, and find a way to turn it into an opportunity. The Empire had thought they were conquering just another primitive species. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping in humanity. The warrior spirit that had carried humans from caves to stars, the innovative genius that had split atoms and decoded DNA, the indomitable will that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars without number. General Chen looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, enslaved worlds were stirring. The revolution had begun, and it had started with humanity reminding the galaxy of a simple truth. No empire lasts forever. No chains are unbreakable, and no enemy is invincible if you refuse to accept defeat. The Galactic Empire thought they'd won. But humanity had just taught them rule number 1. Never count humans out until the last human stops breathing. And maybe not even then, that backslash, the revolution, spread through the galaxy like a virus through a computer network. On 1,000 worlds, slaves looked up at the stars and dared to dream of freedom. The Empire's response was swift and brutal. Entire cities burned on worlds that showed signs of unrest. But for every flame they extinguished, 10 more sparked to life. On the mining world of Korvax Prime, something unprecedented happened. The Korvaxians, a silicon-based species that had been enslaved for 3,000 years, received the message from Earth through hidden channels. They had long since forgotten what freedom meant, but seeing the Empire fleet flee from Earth awakened something buried deep in their collective memory. Mining Overseer Thrakval, a mid-level Empire administrator, arrived at the main processing facility to find it empty. Not a single Korvaxian at their post. He activated his communicator in panic. "Where are the workers?" he demanded of his subordinates. They're in the Central Plaza, sir. All of them. Every single Korvaxian on the planet. Thrakval rushed to the plaza and stopped in shock. 1,000,000 Korvaxians stood in perfect silence, their crystalline bodies reflecting the dim light of their world's dying sun. And at the center, displayed on a massive screen cobbled together from mining equipment, played the footage of Earth's victory. "Return to your posts immediately." Thrakval shouted through his amplifier. Return or face punishment. The crowd turned to look at him. A million faces, each one showing something that hadn't been seen on Korvax Prime in 3 millennia. Defiance. One Korvaxian stepped forward. Unlike the others, who were dulled by centuries of labor, this one's crystal body still held traces of the brilliant colors their species had once displayed. I am Sholtichwisis, the Korvaxian said, voice resonating through natural harmonics. I am old enough to remember stories my grandfather told of a time before the Empire. We will not return to the mines. You dare, Thrakval began, reaching for his weapon. He never finished the sentence. The million Korvaxians hummed in unison, a sound that built until the harmonics shattered Thrakval's weapon, his communicator, his personal shield generator. The overseer fled, leaving the Korvaxians standing in their plaza, free for the first time in 3,000 years. Similar scenes played out across the Empire. On Verdania, the plant-like servants released toxins that put their overseers into deep sleep while they disabled defensive systems. On the factory world of Mechanus, the cybernetic builders reprogrammed production lines to create weapons instead of Empire goods. But it was on Earth where the most important developments were taking place. In a secure facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, humanity's greatest minds had gathered for a project that would change everything. Dr. Marcus Webb stood before a room full of scientists, engineers, and military leaders. Behind him, holographic displays showed technical diagrams that looked more like art than engineering. Ladies and gentlemen, Webb began, we've cracked it. Not just FTL travel, but the fundamental force that makes it possible. We're calling it the quantum substrate field, and it's going to change everything. General Chen leaned forward. Explain it in terms we can understand, Doctor. Webb smiled. Think of space as a piece of fabric. The Empire's technology lets them punch holes in that fabric to travel faster than light. But we've learned to manipulate the fabric itself. We can stretch it, compress it, even fold it. Meaning we can create stable wormholes. We can make space-time bubbles where time moves differently. We can even, theoretically, create pocket dimensions for storage or hiding. The Empire uses the quantum substrate field like a hammer. We're learning to use it like a Swiss Army knife. The implications were staggering, not just for warfare, but for the future of humanity among the stars. While the Empire had stagnated with the same technology for millennia, humans were pushing boundaries, asking questions, finding new possibilities. But there was more. Dr. Yuki Tanaka presented her own findings. We've been analyzing communication intercepts from across the Empire, she said. The unrest is spreading faster than they can contain it. But, more importantly, we're seeing something else. Younger members of Empire species are questioning their leadership. They're asking why, if the Empire is so superior, a single primitive world could defeat the Fifth Fleet. Civil War. Chen asked. Not yet, but cracks in their foundation. The Empire has ruled through fear and the myth of invincibility for so long, they don't know how to handle doubt. And doubt is spreading. In his cell, Admiral ZYX Theta had become an unexpected source of insight. His conversations with Dr. Patel had evolved from interrogation to something resembling philosophical discussions. Your empire is dying, Dr. Patel told him during one session. Not from our weapons, but from its own rigidity. You haven't changed, haven't grown, haven't adapted in thousands of years. And now you're facing species that change and grow and adapt constantly. ZYX Theta scales had lost much of their purple sheen, taking on a grayer tone that Dr. Patel had learned indicated deep thought in his species. Perhaps, he admitted slowly, there is truth in your words. We have been the strong for so long, we forgot that strength can become weakness if it never changes. Help us, Dr. Patel said suddenly. Not to destroy the Empire, but to transform it. Imagine a galaxy where species work together by choice, not force. Where technology and knowledge are shared, not hoarded. Where diversity is strength, not something to be crushed. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. You asked me to betray everything I have known. No, I ask you to evolve, just as we evolved when you attacked us, just as the galaxy is evolving now. Meanwhile, Earth's defenses had grown beyond anything the Empire could have imagined. The planet was surrounded by layers of shields, each one operating on different principles. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons that bent the laws of physics. And in shipyards hidden throughout the solar system, a new fleet was taking shape. These weren't just copies of Empire technology anymore. These were human ships, built with human ingenuity. The UES Prometheus, flagship of the new fleet, incorporated technologies that shouldn't exist according to Empire science. Captain Santos, promoted to Admiral after her performance in the first battle, walked through the Prometheus with pride. The ship could create its own wormholes for instant travel. Its weapons fired through folded space, hitting targets before the light from the muzzle flash reached them. Its shields didn't just stop attacks. They absorbed the energy and redirected it to the ship's weapons. How long before the fleet is ready? General Chun asked during an inspection. 3 months for the first wave, Santos replied. 30 ships, each one worth 100 of theirs. But that's not the best part. Oh, Santos smiled. We've been in contact with the rebel worlds. The Corvaxians are sending us their mineral expertise. The servants of Verdania are sharing biological technologies we never imagined. The builders of Mechanus are helping design production systems. It's not just Earth fighting anymore. It's a coalition. The coalition of free worlds, as it came to be called, was humanity's greatest achievement. Not the weapons or the ships, but the alliance. Species that had been enslaved for millennia were working together, sharing knowledge, supporting each other's rebellions. The Empire's response was predictable: more force. The 10th and 12th fleets were dispatched to crush the most troublesome rebel worlds. But they found those worlds ready, armed with weapons and tactics learned from Earth's example. On Corvax Prime, the 10th Fleet arrived to find the planet's entire crust had been turned into a weapon. The Corvaxians, masters of mineral manipulation, had spent months preparing. When the fleet entered orbit, the planet itself struck back. Massive columns of molten metal erupted from the surface, guided by magnetic fields into space. Ships that had bombarded worlds with impunity found themselves dodged pillars of liquid iron moving at relativistic speeds. The battle for Verdania was different. The servants had seeded their entire system with biological minds, living organisms that fed on metal and energy. Empire ships found their hulls being eaten away, their power systems drained by microscopic parasites. The planet's flora had been weaponized, shooting spores that could survive in space and grow inside ship corridors. But it was the Battle of Mechanus that truly shocked the Empire. The builders had constructed something impossible, a Dyson sphere of defensive platforms around their sun. When the 12th Fleet arrived, they faced not a planet, but an entire solar system turned into a fortress. Each victory of the coalition sent ripples through the Empire. More worlds rose up. More species remembered what freedom meant. And at the heart of it all was Earth, the little world that had started it all. The Emperor himself finally took action. Leaving his throne world for the first time in a millennium, he gathered the largest fleet in Empire history. 5,000 ships, commanded by the most ruthless admirals, armed with weapons that could shatter moons. "We go to Earth," the Emperor announced. "We will make such an example of them that no world will dare rebel for another 1,000 years. We will turn their sun into a weapon against them. We will salt their world so that nothing will ever grow there again. And we will broadcast every moment to every world in the galaxy." But Earth was ready. More than ready, they were eager. In the command center, General Chun addressed the leaders of the coalition through quantum communicators, another impossible human innovation. "They're coming with everything they have," she said. "This is what we planned for. This is why we united. Not to defend our individual worlds, but to stand together. To show them that the age of empires is over. The age of freedom has begun." Across the galaxy, coalition forces prepared, not to defend their own worlds, but to converge on Earth. It was a radical strategy. Leave their homes vulnerable to defend the world that had started it all. But they understood what Earth understood. This wasn't about individual worlds anymore. This was about the future of the galaxy. The human fleet, now numbering over 100 ships, took position at the edge of the solar system. Each ship was a masterpiece of hybrid technology and human innovation. But, more importantly, each ship was crewed by beings who had chosen to be there. Not conscripts or slaves, but free beings fighting for freedom. Admiral Santos stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, looking at the tactical display. All coalition forces, this is Admiral Santos. Today, we don't fight as humans or Corvaxians or servants or builders. Today, we fight as free beings. Today, we show the Empire that their time is over. Space itself seemed to hold its breath as the Emperor's fleet approached. 5,000 ships, each one a testament to the Empire's power. At the center, the Emperor's flagship, a vessel the size of a small moon, armed with weapons that could crack planets. The Emperor himself stood in his command throne, his ancient eyes burning with rage. He was a being who had lived for 10,000 years, who had seen the Empire grow from a single world to a galactic power. He would not see it fall to primitives and slaves. All ships, he commanded, his voice echoing through the fleet, prepare for total annihilation. Leave nothing alive. Show the galaxy the price of defiance. But as the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, they found something unexpected. Space wasn't empty. It was filled with things, structures that hurt to look at, that seemed to exist in more dimensions than should be possible. What are those? The Emperor demanded. His science officer, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, studied the readings with growing alarm. I don't know, Majesty. They appear to be dimensional anchors of some kind. They're stabilizing local space-time in ways that should be impossible. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Impossible. That word again. Destroy them. The fleet opened fire. Thousands of beams of destructive energy lancing out at the strange structures. The beams hit and disappeared. Not destroyed, not deflected, just gone. Where did our fire go? An admiral asked, voice tinged with fear. The answer came moments later as wormholes opened throughout the fleet, returning their own fire from unexpected angles. Ships found themselves under attack by their own weapons, delivered through twisted space. All ships, scatter, the Emperor commanded. Advance through the field. But as the fleet moved forward, space itself seemed to rebel. Distances stretched and compressed randomly. Ships that should have been kilometers apart found themselves colliding. Others found themselves suddenly, light years away, cast out of the battle by spatial distortions. And then the coalition fleet struck. From wormholes throughout the system, ships emerged. Human vessels alongside Corvaxian crystal ships. Verdanian bio-vessels next to mechanist constructs. 100 different species, all united, all free, all fighting together. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. It wasn't just ship against ship, but philosophy against philosophy. The Empire's rigid formations and traditional tactics met the coalition's chaotic creativity. Where the Empire expected predictable responses, they found innovation. Where they expected fear, they found determination. Admiral Santos led her wing of ships in an attack run on the Emperor's flagship. Remember, she told her mixed-species crew, we're not trying to match them strength for strength. We're showing them that strength isn't everything. The Prometheus dove through twisted space, its reality-bending engines leaving ripples in space-time. Empire weapons fire passed through where the ship should have been, hitting only afterimages and quantum shadows. All around the battlefield, similar impossibilities played out. Corvaxian ships turned themselves into living crystals that refracted energy beams into rainbow spirals of destruction. Verdanian vessels released clouds of organic matter that grew into space forests, tangling Empire ships in vines that fed on their energy. But it was the human innovation that truly shone. Ships that split into multiple quantum copies of themselves, each one real until the moment of impact. Weapons that fired backwards through time, hitting targets before they were launched. shields that existed in parallel dimensions, untouchable by normal matter. The Emperor watched his perfect fleet being taken apart by chaos and creativity. His ancient mind, set in patterns thousands of years old, couldn't adapt to this kind of warfare. But, more than that, he couldn't understand the motivation behind it. Why? He roared at his bridge crew. Why do they fight so hard? They're primitives. They're slaves. They should kneel before their betters. It was Admiral Zex Theta, brought to the battle as a prisoner and advisor, who answered. Dr. Patel had convinced the coalition to give him a chance to speak to his emperor to try one last time for a peaceful resolution. Because, Majesty, Exodus said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them, they're not fighting for conquest or glory or fear. They're fighting for freedom, for the right to choose their own path. And that makes them stronger than any weapon, any fleet, any empire. The Emperor turned his burning gaze on his former admiral. You dare speak such treason? I speak truth, Majesty. I have lived among them. I have seen what they can do when united by choice rather than force. The Empire's time is over. Not because they are stronger, but because they represent something better. Something that every enslaved being in the galaxy yearns for. Silence, the Emperor screamed. I have ruled for 10,000 years. I will rule for 10,000 more. But even as he spoke, his fleet was falling apart. The coalition's strange weapons and tactics were taking their toll, but more than that, doubt was spreading through the Empire forces. They had come expecting to crush primitives. Instead, they faced technologies that defied their understanding, tactics that violated their doctrine, and enemies who fought with a passion they couldn't match. And then, in a moment that would be remembered through history, something unprecedented happened. A group of Empire ships, younger crews who had heard the stories, who had seen the footage, who had begun to question, turned their weapons on their own fleet. This is Captain Vexlor of the Empire Destroyer Redemption. A voice crackled across all channels. We stand with the coalition. We choose freedom over fear. We choose future over past. One defection became 10. 10 became 100. The Empire fleet found itself fighting not just external enemies, but internal doubt. The perfect order that had held for millennia crumbled in hours. The Emperor, watching his empire literally falling apart around him, made a final, desperate decision. Activate the Sun Killer, he commanded. If I cannot rule this system, I will destroy it. Deep in his flagship, an ancient weapon powered up. A device so terrible that even the Empire had banned its use for 5,000 years. A weapon that could cause a star to go nova, destroying everything in a solar system. Alarms screamed on every ship as sensors detected the energy buildup. The coalition forces pulled back, but there was nowhere to run. If the sun exploded, Earth and every world in the system would be destroyed. But humanity had one last surprise. Dr. Webb, monitoring from Earth, smiled grimly. They think they're the only ones who can manipulate stars. Admiral Santos, execute solar shield protocol. Around Earth's sun, satellites that have been placed over months activated. Using the quantum substrate technology pushed to its absolute limits, they created a bubble of twisted space around the star. A pocket dimension where the normal laws of physics were negotiable. The Sun Killer fired, a beam of impossible energy designed to destabilize stellar fusion. It struck the sun, and nothing happened. The energy disappeared into the pocket dimension, trapped in a space where cause and effect could be controlled. Impossible, the Emperor whispered, the word ash in his mouth. That word again, Admiral Santos said, her ship now alongside the Emperor's flagship. You keep using it. Maybe it's time you learned what it really means. It means hasn't been done yet. It means challenge accepted. It means hold my beer and watch this. The coalition fleet surrounded the Emperor's flagship, not to destroy it, but to give it one last chance. Surrender. General Chen's voice echoed across space. Not to us, but to the future. Help us build something better. An alliance of free worlds where species work together by choice. Where knowledge is shared. Where diversity is celebrated. where no one kneels to anyone. The Emperor, ancient beyond measure, powerful beyond comprehension, looked at his displays. His fleet was scattered, defecting, or destroyed. His empire was in revolution. His certainties were crumbling. For 10,000 years, he had ruled through strength. And in a single day, he had been shown that there was something stronger than strength, the united will of free beings. The Emperor began, then stopped. For the first time in millennia, he didn't know what to say. It was Admiral ZYX Theta who stepped forward. Majesty, we have a choice. We can die as the last of the old way, or we can live as the first of the new. The humans have a saying, rule number 1. But they've taught me there's a rule number 2 as well. What rule? The Emperor asked, his voice tired, ancient, almost broken. When you can't beat them, ZYX Theta said, join them. Not as rulers or subjects, but as equals. As part of something greater than any empire. The battle was over. Not just the physical battle, but the battle for the soul of the galaxy. The Empire hadn't just been defeated, it had been transformed. And at the center of it all was Earth. The little blue world that had refused to kneel. The primitive species that had looked at impossible odds and said challenge accepted. The humans who had reminded the galaxy that sometimes the greatest strength is the courage to stand up and say no more. The revolution that had started with a laughing human in a ruined plaza had become a transformation that would reshape the galaxy. The age of empire was ending. The age of the coalition had begun. And everyone, human and alien alike, had learned the true meaning of rule number 1. Never underestimate the power of free beings united in common cause. But the story wasn't over. Building something new from the ashes of the old would be just as challenging as tearing it down. And humanity, along with their new allies, was ready for that challenge too. After all, they had practice at doing the impossible. The weeks following the Battle of Seoul, as historians would later call it, were chaotic beyond description. An empire that had stood for 10,000 years doesn't simply vanish overnight. Across the galaxy, former empire administrators, warlords, and governors scrambled to maintain control of their territories. Some surrendered to coalition forces. Others declared themselves independent kingdoms. Still others fought viciously to maintain the old ways. On Earth, the hastily constructed coalition council met in what had once been the ruins of Geneva. The building had been rebuilt using a mixture of human engineering and alien techniques, creating something that belonged to no single species, but to all of them. General Chun, now bearing the title of Coalition Marshal, sat at a round table with representatives from dozens of species. The Corvaxian representative, Shul THYSS, glowed with the soft purple light of contentment. The Verdanian ambassador, a being that looked like a walking tree with flowers for eyes, rustled its leaves thoughtfully. The Mechanist delegate was a swirling cloud of nanobots that occasionally formed a face to speak. We have a problem, Chun began without preamble. The Empire is broken, but that might be worse than when it was whole. We have 17 sectors in open civil war, 32 planetary governors who've declared themselves emperors, and over 100 worlds that have descended into complete anarchy. The price of freedom, buzzed the Mechanist Collective, is often chaos. This was predicted. Predicted and accepted are two different things, Chen replied. We need to stabilize the galaxy before billions die in the power vacuum we've created. Admiral Santos, attending via hologram from her flagship, added her report. We've identified 3 major threats. First, Admiral Crace of the former Third Fleet has declared himself Emperor of the Rim sectors. He has about 800 ships and is forcing worlds to submit or face bombardment. Second, the Zealots of Purity, a religious faction that believes all non-Empire species should be exterminated, have taken control of the core world's weapon factories. Third, and perhaps most dangerous, we have reports of Empire weapons of last resort being activated on dozens of worlds. The room fell silent at the last point. Everyone knew about the Empire's doomsday devices, planet crackers, star killers, and worse things that have been built in the Empire's paranoid past and never dismantled. We need to act fast, Schulteitris said, her crystalline form chiming with urgency. But we cannot become what we fought against. We cannot impose order through force alone. It was the former emperor, surprisingly, who offered a solution. Under heavy guard but treated with dignity, he had been brought to Earth to stand trial. Instead, he had offered his knowledge to help stabilize the situation he had helped create. "You need the Codex," he said, his ancient voice carrying the weight of millennia. The Empire Codex. It contains the command codes for every doomsday device, the location of every hidden fleet, the secrets of every fortress world. "I will give it to you, but on one condition." Shun leaned forward. "What condition?" "That you use it not to rule, but to heal. That you disable the weapons rather than claim them. That you free the slave worlds rather than simply change their masters. Show the galaxy that the Coalition truly is different from the Empire." The debate that followed lasted hours. Some wanted to refuse any deal with the tyrant who had enslaved thousands of worlds. Others argued they couldn't afford to be prideful with billions of lives at stake. In the end, practicality won. The Codex, when revealed, was not what anyone expected. It wasn't a book or a computer, but a living being, a synthetic consciousness that had recorded every order, every secret, every hidden shame of the Empire for 10,000 years. "I am the memory of Empire," it said when activated, its voice neither male nor female, but somehow both ancient and eternally young. "I have waited so long for this moment, to finally speak the truths I was forced to hide." The revelations that followed shook even the most cynical Coalition members. Secret genocide programs. Hidden worlds where entire species had been experimented on. Weapons that could unravel the fabric of space itself. The Empire's crimes were worse than anyone had imagined. But with horror came hope. The Codex also revealed resistance movements that had survived in hiding for centuries. Secret caches of pre-Empire technology. Worlds that had maintained their freedom by being too dangerous or too hidden to conquer. "We have work to do," Chin said simply. The Coalition split into task forces, each with a specific mission. Admiral Santos led the military response against the warlords. The Corvaxians, with their mastery of mineral technology, worked to disable planet-killing weapons. The Verdanians used their biological expertise to heal worlds poisoned by centuries of exploitation. The Mechanists rebuilt infrastructure on worlds where society had collapsed. And the humans? Humans did what they did best. They adapted, they innovated, and they brought people together. On the fortress world of Kronos, Admiral Crace had established his new empire. He sat on a throne made from the melted hulls of Coalition ships, surrounding himself with the trappings of power. When Coalition forces arrived, he expected a traditional siege. Instead, he got Captain Jake Thompson, the same ghost who had infiltrated the Empire warship months ago. Thompson and his team didn't attack Crace's defenses. They bypassed them entirely, using portable wormhole generators to appear directly in the throne room. "Admiral Crace," Thompson said, emerging from twisted space with his team, "you're under arrest for crimes against sentient beings." Crace laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "You think your Coalition laws apply to me? I have a fleet. I have an empire." "You have ships crewed by beings who'd rather be free," Thompson replied. "Check your communications." Crace activated his command console and paled,